Alright guys, one last time for tonight. MTG Biggie here, and this is the last video for the evening. Thank you for sticking with me so far, because we have a lot to talk about going forward, and right now I think, having talked about the decks that are going to play with Jace the Mind Sculptor and with Bloodbraid Elf, it's time to talk about how we're going to beat those decks and what our plan is for Death and Taxes. So I'm not going to fully deck tech this out. It's the same mono white Death and Taxes shell that we've been playing with all along, but here is at least the starting point of tuning it to combat Jund and to combat Jace the Mind Sculptor based control decks. First and foremost, we've dropped the Iganjo Castle for another Cavern of Souls. This is a concession to the fact that when there's more control decks, there's more counter spells. Jace is absolutely going to bring more control decks along. So that's step one. Step two is an old favorite, and that is Phyrexian Revoker, which is generally much better in Legacy. It's really great against the Miracles deck in Legacy because you can name things like Jace, and when Senso's Divining Top was around, you name that a lot of the time, most of the time then Jace is a secondary target. So this card, just you name Jace, Jace can't be activated. That's step two. Step three for the Jace battle, we're changing the 1-of slot. We've trimmed on Restoration Angels, and we're playing a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Spirit of the Labyrinth effectively turns off the Brainstorm mode on Jace. It also turns off control decks playing Opt a lot of the time. They have to absolutely play it on your turn. They can't main phase it. It cuts off Serum Visions. It's a card that hoses any decks that are trying to get greedy with card draw. So, Spirit of Labyrinth is going in the 1-of flex slot that we have available to us. And then, for Bloodbraid Elf and for Jund, all at the same time in the same build, we're upping our count of Mirran Crusaders to 3. I can see this being a full 4-of. Legacy Death and Taxes have taken to playing 4-of to combat Leovold and stuff like that. And to race True Name Nemesis. Mirran Crusader blocks the Bloodbraid Elf all day long. The only spell that Jund has that can handle a Mirran Crusader is Lightning Bolt. Beyond that, they can't terminate it, they can't Dreadbore it, they can't Maelstrom Pulse it, they can't Kolaghan's Command it, they can't do anything to it, they can't Fatal Push it. This card is absolutely going to roadblock them. So we're going to leverage this build of our main deck with things like Aether Vial and Cavern of Souls to get around Jace, and we're going to battle the Bloodbraid Elf battle with Mirran Crusader, which Jund has a hard time with. Beyond that, we have a couple sideboard things that we're going to do. I think Thalia, Heretic, Cathar is really good against Bloodbraid, because when it comes in tapped and whatever it brings with it comes in tapped, that feels pretty good. Also, I think this deck is pretty good against Jund in general, this card, because they have nothing but non-basics, and making their lands come in tapped is pretty solid as well. And just being able to out-tempo them with a card like this, combined with our tempo plan with Flickerwisp and stuff like that, adds a lot of value. I know Bloodbraid Elf is tempo on top of tempo, but I think we can keep up with them. We just have to play a different game. And then the other sideboard tech that I'm going to try out against Jace decks are just a couple Mana Tithe. This may not be good forever in the format. People may start playing around it, but your opponent's sitting there with their blue-white control deck. They're looking at a bunch of basic planes. They're looking at things like Thalia, Leonin Arbiter, stuff like that. They're going to slam that Jace down on turn 5, hopefully if we have a Thalia on deck. And they're going to walk right into a Mana Tithe. That's kind of the dream, to at the very least be able to just get you. It also does have utility against the Jund deck. They can cascade in whatever they want. We can counter it, or we can counter the Bloodbraid. They still get the cascade, but we slow down their insane tempo. Another thing is Burrenton Forge-Tender. If they're playing the Bloodbraid Rabblemaster sort of game, this card goes a long way to kind of stop what they're doing. I know that Aether Vial gets worse in the face of a bunch of Kolaghan's commands, but we could trim on these guys, bring in your Thalia, Heretic, Cathar, a couple of Forge-Tenders. We can even go like really deep and go into like Settle the Wreckage, and even stuff like Surgical Relics to stop their Tarmogoyf. So we have a lot of play against Jund just built into our shell. I think Jund was a slight favorite over us before, and now the deck's a good enough deck to where we're going to have to adjust our game plan, but I think it's absolutely doable. Also, side note, Phyrexian Revoker can name Liliana of the Veil or Liliana of the Last Hope as well. So I think the value of this card kind of goes up a lot with us. And we just have to play the proper game plan. I think we're still good if we're going to Thraben Inspector into Leonin, into Ghost Quarter you on turn 3. That's a good game plan. We also can play other stuff. Unexpectedly Absent's a card that I thought about. Condemn is another card that I thought about, but I think where we're at, this is going to be the recipe, and I don't think Death and Taxes players should panic. The worst case scenario for all of this is that Mono White is just a little bit too behind, and we work into Eldrazian taxes again, or we work into Blue-White taxes, which is coming up quite a bit, or we work into some other flavor of Death and Taxes. We're flexible, we have the ability to splash, we have a lot of disruption, and Thalia is an amazing Magic card. This card is on the same sort of power level as a card like Bloodbraid Elf, and it matches up very well against it, having first strike, so we're not doing too bad. That being said, guys, I hope that this is helpful. I hope that you guys continue doing what you're doing with Death and Taxes, and that we continue to show the world that Thalia is one of the best cards in the game, and that this motley crew of misfit creatures and annoying little dudes is going to be the way to play Modern for a long, long time coming. I'll be making my adjustments. I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break to play with a Jason Mind Sculptor deck, but I'll be back to Death and Taxes before long, and we're going to play some sweet games of Magic, and we're going to continue just blowing up lands and annoying our customers into submission, and, doing our thing, because Death and Taxes never dies. There's one thing in life, two things in life that are always certain: death and taxes. Either way, guys, I appreciate you. Let me know what you guys think about Modern, about Jace, about Bloodbraid, about Death and Taxes, and where we stand. I'll talk to you guys again very soon.